Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of An Integrated Approach. This is an integrated approach where we integrate various subjects and topics concerning mental health, wellness, and spirituality each and every first Sunday at 6 p.m. We typically do this from a Judeo Christian perspective. However, when we talk about spirituality, we're talking about it overall in a general sense. So we do incorporate many modes and methods concerning spirituality and respect individual belief systems concerning the various subjects and topics that we discuss and bring in. Now, one of the things that happens here every month is that we bring in an invited guest where we talk about various subjects and we integrate those things into our broadcast. Tonight, we're going to be talking about trauma. In addition, for those of you that are tuning in right now, as well as later, you will be able to watch this broadcast in the present on Facebook Live, Dion Brown, YouTube, DMV Therapist, and Instagram, the selfcare_therapist. After this broadcast is over, you still will be able to replay the broadcast as well as share with others, and it'll be permanently stored on my YouTube channel, DMV Therapist. So we are excited tonight to have with us a special guest by the name of Mr. Corey George. Now, what I'm going to do before I bring him in live, I'm going to share some specifics about him so you can know a little bit more about him. All right. Who is Corey George? Corey George is an award-winning and globally recognized trauma specialist who specializes in the intersectionality of historic, cultural, and intergenerational trauma. Corey George is also an award-winning television host and personalities whose work can be seen on season 1 of A&E's original series Digital Addiction, as well as appearances on OWN's Ayana Fix My Life. He has also served as the creator, executive producer, and host of One-on-One with Corey George, which aired on DCTV Public Access Network. George's steady and steadfast advocacy and purpose-fulfilled life for those who have suffered from various forms of trauma was inspired by his ability to thrive after experiencing childhood sexual abuse, bullying, abandonment, and the sudden and unsuspected loss of his mother at the age of 7. As a parent to both a transgender and a son who is on the autism spectrum, George is reminded that sound mental and physical health must be a top priority for all, and that the work continues to help others more safely navigate their lives. George is also the recipient of the 2023 Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award for volunteerism. And without further ado, we want to bring on Mr. Corey George. Hello, sir.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for fitting us into your busy schedule. We know that you have a lot of things that are going on that you're working on. So we want to just say thank you for squeezing us in some time to talk about this subject that you specialize in with trauma.
Well, thank you for having me. It's hard to turn down the opportunities if I can fit it in because, especially for our culture, we can't talk about it enough. So when I have the moment that I can inject knowledge and bring it on home for people, not only being a survivor but also being a practitioner and being a consultant, I'm able to marry the practicality of it all with the knowledge and, hopefully inspire folks to see their mental health as a lifestyle, as a lifestyle shift, and not just because you're going through something, but also as something that is also preventative. So when you do go through something, there's a buffer there that can help you to be more resilient.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think it's and based upon some of the things that you've encountered and experienced and what you just shared as well, it becomes more for you, more than just educational, but lived experiences as well as very passionate as well.
Yeah, and sometimes that passion can go up against norms that are rigid, right? Because we have families, we have friends. When you're passionate about something, it's easy to identify when the room shifts when you start talking about something that we don't normally talk about or commonly talk about. And one of my mantras ever since I got into what I do is let's have the tough conversations because then they become easier. And then that changes through the generations. Meaning, if I'm talking about mental health, if I'm talking about these things, my kids, when they have kids or with their friends, they're going to be more apt to talk about these things. So the awareness becomes automatic.
Absolutely. Thank you. So as we proceed, those of you that will be coming online from time to time, you will be able to add in some comments as well as ask questions, as we go forward. So please feel free to chime in, and you'll hear me say this from time to time, particularly those of you that are on Facebook. It is on my Facebook page and it is public. So if you're looking and listening, you can share it as well to your own Facebook page. It is streaming live on Dion Brown. So you should be able to share it from your phone or other device onto your own personal page, because we're gonna get into some discussions about trauma and what it is and what it looks like, and particularly since June is Men's Health Month, it is a good time to look at that and to dive in and to talk about trauma as it relates to men. So again, if you're tuning in to Facebook, feel free to like, comment, and share. And those of you that are on or jumping on, you'll be able to post questions as we go forward and continue. All right. So June, one of the things that's happening in June is that it's Men's Health Month. And throughout the year, we have a lot of different months that occur. Sometimes there's more than one thing that occurs in a certain month. Sometimes there can be between 3 and 5 in one month. But for tonight's purposes, primarily we're going to be focusing in on men's health overall, and trauma is a part of that. But since June is Men's Health Month, let's talk about the importance of this month. And one of the things that I did last month with one of my guests, I asked the same question, but it was pertaining to mental health. But for men, for June, should we even have a Men's Health Month set aside for men? What do you think?
Absolutely. These awareness months, usually the hope is to take the awareness and flood that month so the way it becomes an active part of people's psyche outside of that month, right? So take Black History Month. That month is about educating and celebrating. So hopefully the people, not just our culture, but especially people outside of our culture, they have a granular experience. They have the knowledge that it's not always that they recall it, but it's embedded. So they understand, and then it increases the richness of the appreciation of another culture. So just like this month, the flooding, like these shows like this, it floods the information channels if people are willing to, and somebody's going to get something out of it. Whereas they're going to find out something new about themselves. They're going to be able to hopefully integrate something into their lifestyle, even if it's something small like meditation, something small like just thinking of, what is the power of being vulnerable? How do you access that for your own strength? Even if it's been monopolized, how advantageous is that? So my goal is to always flood, with thoughts and information, and hopefully people get nuggets from that. And then we start conversations with with their friends, with their families, and that's always my intention.
Okay, we got a comment already from the first question. Samuel said, I feel any gender has one month dedicated to them for any particular issue. The other gender should as well, or else you send the message that one gender's problems don't matter. Is there a women's month? I'm trying
but there's a great point there, because for men's health, especially mental health. Now physical health has always been there, because we've had Arnold Schwarzenegger, we've had Rocky, and bodybuilding, sports has always been there. But mental health is something that's not still not the common thing we talk about. For men, because men are still trying to overcome the stereotypes and the messages, because sometimes when we think of masculinity, it shaves off some of your whole ability to access that part of your emotions, because it's seen as not masculine, or you have to take it on the chin, you got to push through. And as I tell clients, okay, you took it all on the chin and now your chin is on the floor. How do you take some off the chin? No one taught you that. And that's where we look at the decline of the life expectancy of men, because chronic stress can also turn into chronic health issues. So that's why all of this is important.
Absolutely. And I think when we talk about, Men's Health Month in June, and this ties into some other aspects of various things we're going to talk about. But, that's physical health, that's mental health, that's social, that's spiritual. So, if we just talk about the aspect of physical health, a lot of men wrestle and struggle with going to the doctors, with taking their medicine.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Right. With being proactive with those, particularly those age relevant tests like colonoscopies, prostate exams, right? So that's all a part of Men's Health Month as well.
But also, but I also want to tie this in back to mental health. Certain cultures, let's say, but let's say white men are more prone to getting those exams. White men are more prone to going to their doctors, even if their wives insist, because a lot of white men don't have the inheritance of medical trauma that our culture has or other marginalized people have had, right? Yep. So for example, when I grew up, I did not go to a dentist until my teeth were falling out. My mother had false teeth in the front at 19. So what I thought was, you don't go in the dentist until something's wrong. Now my children is very different, because now I know better. They have their stuff every 6 months. So this is how we change the course. We have to first recognize where it's not working well for us, and then how do we change course slowly. So then, when you look at those myths and barriers, that can also lead to why physical health may not be as important, because what is this doctor going to do to me? Or even with medication, now I have to admit, as a man, something's wrong with me, especially in a culture where racism can already implore you to think that you are already devalued already. So now you're asking me to go take medicine, and don't mention mental health medication, because as you know, as a practicing therapist, sometimes it's hard to wrestle our male clients just to consider some adjunct therapies to help them, at least until the other stuff starts to work.
True. One of the things that, and we have a bunch of comments. One of the things is good, because we're on question number 1, but we'll get there. One of the things that has helped plenty of my clients, when I've dealt with clients who needed psychotropic medicine, for sure, or possibly it was worth them getting a try, was for them to see a familiar face, a Black male therapist who has no secondary gains. I'm not getting any money or any financial benefit from talking to them about the idea of let's consider, right, medication management. I'm not saying you necessarily need it, but let's consider it and set up an appointment. And I've literally, because I'm a familiar face, with all of the historical racism and the fear and all of the things in the medical industry that people are cautious about, having a Black male practitioner guide them along the road of possible medication management has been helpful, for sure.
Yeah, and also, and also the issue that we face is when one medication doesn't work, or the side effects are a lot. Okay, I give up. And as I tell my clients, there's more than one medication, and maybe you have to adjust your dosage. This is where you can get more control. Hey, this doesn't work for me. Let me speak up for myself. So part of it is about agency too. Does my voice affect my treatment? So yes, when we increase men's agency in their own voice, now you can tell your doctor or your psychiatrist, hey, I tried this medicine and it's not really affecting me. I don't see a change. Or I tried it and these side effects, I just can't handle it. So then now we talk about a shift. Can we try something else? Because there's several drugs for several different types of things that we can treat. So I try to tell people, be open-minded to what can work for you, because this is your life. And and also, before we talked on the show, we talked, I mentioned, think about the quality of life that you want as you progress in your life. Meaning, what type of Like, what is the quality of your relationships that you would like to have that you have not experienced yet? Because there's something blocking that. There are folks that when they get stressed out, they shut down. They don't know how to have the proper conflict management. But then I want to go one step further. Sometimes our parents are also training us as if we are still in survival mode because their grandparents were in survival mode. So the coping skills that they have learned are not, but they don't suit the times. Meaning I shut down. Why? Because you have a resource. But your grandmother probably didn't know she had a resource because it makes sense. It makes sense back then. There may not have been a whole lot of Black therapists at all. So who am I going to trust? So then we pass on that lack of conversation about it, and that's when we have the thing of everything stays at home, or you take it back to church, and of course we talk about that too. These are the things that for me, when we look at how historical trauma such as slavery has impacted cultural trauma that now serves in our bloodline. So these are things that we can actually start to then identify and correct.
Absolutely. DJ Touch and Go said March is Women's History Month. And Samuel commented again to say, absolutely. I also think that anything that advocates for men's health and human characteristics, it benefits everyone else because women and kids are connected and we all need each other. Okay. Very true. Very true.
But I'm glad he said human because because when I tell people, I know when I walk out the door, everyone sees me as Black. I know that. But internally, I want to have a human experience because I have so many nerve endings. I have, and the brain is wondrous. I want to explore that from a human level. So I tell people, I want to feel everything, even if it kind of burns. I want to feel it because the only way you get through it is literally, to go through it. And sometimes the hard truth is the things that we're holding back on, and that causes us to stay depressed. Because sometimes we stay depressed because walking through that truth seems scarier, and it probably is, but it won't be scary as long as you think. So when you think about, I'm suffering from depressive thoughts, I'm suffering from suicidal ideation, I'm suffering from anxiety for years, but all it really takes is, am I ready to sit down and have the tough conversations just for a while until I tell people, you don't cry the same once you recognize that you want to cry it out. And the next cry is the same. I have this example of an onion. Most people love to cook with onions, but we all know when we slice that onion, we prepare for, that, the little tinge of pain. But once it passes, you get to the good part. Now you can cook and now you can have food. Now you can enjoy that work. So that's how I kind of like describe it. It is going to burn. I tell people, please don't have me tell you it's not going to burn a little bit. It will, because it burned when it happened. It burned when it happened. So healing is about bringing up some parts of it so you can kind of and address the thoughts behind it, right? As you already know. So we have to look at the cognition. And this is a big thing that helps people. So I'm 50 now. If something happened at 6, the only cognition I have is at 6, and I'm 50. And I'm walking around 44 years with the 6-year-old cognition of what happened with my brain development, not even fully intact. I'm doing myself a disservice because I'm walking around with the 6-year-old mentality. Then when I'm triggered, I may respond as a 6-year-old in a 50-year-old body.
Yep, absolutely, just like that.
Just like that. And so that's why other people can't understand your reactions being so out of sync with the actual thing that's happening in the present moment. And now you've lost mindfulness. You've lost the connection between your survival brain and your, and the higher part of your brain. That's all the reasoning and validation of the facts and logic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes sense. People, the average person, to your point and example, the average person would not even begin to understand or comprehend, like you said, 6 years old, but they see you as a 50-year-old developed man, but not understanding that your cognition may be stuck and locked at 6 years old, and that you having a unhealed from trauma. Of course, that would look very different in a healed person or person beginning their journey of healing. But that behavioral response would seem way out of sorts for anybody looking in at that 6-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely. I got into anger management for a while before I got in the throes of trauma, and what I learned is that anger itself is not a bad emotion. Sometimes we're taught that, right?
We
I
are.
said, yeah, as you said, it's a behavioral response associated with each emotion, because you can be happy and really have a manic state and go out and buy a house, and buy a whole house and regret it. So it's like, why did I do that? So, think about the 6-year-old example. If the 6-year-old is having tantrums and he's misdiagnosed with ADHD in school, because schools are not really, really prone to diagnosing mental health stuff just in general. It's about what is affecting their educational capacity. And then to throw a label and medication, yes, that's what they do. But what happens is, if the 6-year-old's response to being triggered is a tantrum and it's not corrected, that becomes a 14-year-old that fights.
Yes, sir.
Because he has no other resolution. That becomes a 30-year-old that's in prison because he probably killed somebody as a response. He didn't mean to kill anybody, but his response was, I'm either endangered. Because here's the thing about trauma. But the brain never gets desensitized. The brain gets sensitized to it. So that means that your hypervigilance becomes heightened, that and then your fear response becomes more often. And that's why some people seem unstable, but it's just because the nervous system has been out of whack and we have to get it back on track. And, and again, maybe that same thing that you thought would make you fearful doesn't make you angry anymore. It's just that it was a stored response, because that's what because that's what the memory of trauma is. It's a stored response, meaning it's the trigger, but it's everything that you did in order to survive that response.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that. Let's see. Okay, I was trying to see if there were any other comments before. Oh, okay. Yep. He said it can be painful to process what happened, but once you do, it's not as disturbing or reoccurring painful memory. This based upon what you just said and his comment, and we're gonna obviously kind of just jump around a little bit here, but with June being Men's Health Month and men, I'm sure yourself over the years, as well as myself, seeing so many men who experience all types of trauma. And a lot of times to that, now I have some younger men who have come in to see me, which is great. Nowadays therapy or counseling is a thing, right?
Yeah.
It's hot. It's the thing to do. So generationally, years ago to this point, there were barriers to people maybe getting help through counseling, coaching, etc. That's getting better now.
Yeah.
Some of the messaging was to keep everything in the house, right? Don't tell anybody your problems, your struggles. Just take everything to church. Even in spiritual religious settings, across spiritual foundations, for the most part, even there's shiftings and changes there where, in churches and synagogues and mosques and even some of the Eastern religious traditions, there's a move more toward counseling, therapy, meditation, et cetera, et cetera. So things are shifting and changing. So people are coming in, and I'm seeing more younger men now come in to say, I need to, I am seeing that what happened with me years ago, or my significant other even, is seeing what happened with me years ago is causing some cognitive distortions, some emotional paralysis, and some behavioral problems. So we are seeing, but sometimes people come later in life when they get older.
Well, I found that, social media has been a gift towards the younger people, because you can identify with a lot more people who are being transparent on social media. There's a lot of people that are coming forth with their stories, not just of the pain, but of the healing and, the work. You see more men crying on social media now, right? So it becomes more acceptable when you see examples that are outside of you, because you may want to cry, but you didn't see an example of your dad crying. Or if you did cry, you heard but you heard the notions man up and all this, but man up just means bottle up. Man up means bottle up.
It does.
And like with any bottle, if you shake it, but that cork's going to pop at some point, and it's going to splatter everywhere. But if you're in control of your bottle and you open the cap, you can pour it out at your leisure in the best way that fits you. So it's not that you don't feel anything. When you have the capabilities and the adaptive coping skills, you can release that stress in a timely manner. When we get to maladaptive, that's when you're looking at the addictions. That's when you're looking at the compulsive actions. That's when you're looking at the impulsive things, because we need stress relief right now. It's like if you've seen your dad, he gets stressed and he goes grab a beer, or he goes out and plays, or he goes out and does something. Or you see him explode. You think that that's a thing that men do because that was the example. Or you may think opposite, like, I didn't like how he did that, so I'm going to be probably shut down. So there's these polar opposites where when you see the exposure, we tend to choose what we normalize. So we don't normalize everything, but as children, we tend to choose, I don't like that example, or maybe I do like that example. And again, so the things about children and the way we cope as children, those are things that we use so we can get through. But if it's not corrected as adults, because our goal is to have healthy relationships as adults, if that's not corrected, then it turns into maladaptive coping skills in your relationships. So So for example, when I was going through the issues of abuse and the after effects of all of that, I was very quiet. I didn't feel seen or heard, so I didn't say anything. I didn't have a voice. I was timid, all this. So when I would get into my relationships, I had all kinds of issues, and it wasn't their fault. It wasn't until I woke up and said, I'm bringing something into these relationships that's common in all of them.
Okay.
I had to own that. I had to own and say, there's nothing wrong with me. Something happened to me. It's a trauma-informed response. No, there's nothing wrong with me because I'm adapting properly to an abusive type of situation. How else would I have adapted? So when we give ourselves the onus to say, something happened to me and I did the best I could. There's nothing wrong with me. I had to cope. And coping at that time just wasn't the best. It was the best thing so I can get through it.
Yep.
But now guess what? It's not happening anymore. So I don't have to get through it. I have to live through it now.
Yeah. Well, I maybe a few months ago, the church that I go to, we had a huge men's retreat, and I don't specialize in it, but they asked me to come do a presentation about trauma. So I did. And it was very part of what I do is integrating mental health and spirituality, but it was about 60 men. And I told them, I said and I went through various types of trauma and the subtypes and what some of their common symptoms and experiences might be, and talked about the brain a little bit. But one of the key points I shared was that your traumatic experience or incident wasn't your fault, but your healing and how you deal with it the concept of post-traumatic growth and what comes out of it for you is that onus is on you to work with that. Your healing is up to you, and you can be healed and you can recover. And I'm gonna tell you, I had them write out any types of trauma they experienced in their life, and you're talking about a time of great pain being uncovered and released, and men sharing and crying and opening up for healing. So it is important, and it has to happen.
Yeah, see, the thing about it is, and I'm glad we do that because there is a marrying now of ministry and mental health, and it should be because because people like you, because you're in the church, but you're also in mental health. Why can't God bless you with the knowledge of helping His people? That's what I never understood. It's like doctors are part of the congregation. Finances are part of the congregation, but you don't believe that God has had His hand on them in order to help you in that way. And these are the people that know the Bible. These are people that understand faith, that can integrate treatment with faith. So you can still be in the space of something that is familiar and that you love. And faith is very strong in healing, because really healing is about believing that you can, right? So what is faith? Faith is believing in the unknown. So I tell people, if you don't believe that you can heal, I don't know how I can help you. I can't heal you. I can guide you. I can guide you expertly through that, but you have to have that, that faith. So even in my practice, I ask them what level of reliance they have on faith, and I may have them integrate prayer or scripture reading. I may have them integrate some type of spiritual type of meditation, because that's familiar to you. That's something that makes you feel at peace.
Oh, absolutely. And it taps into the for a long time, and definitely I saw this. The faith community and mental health have been separate, but it's definitely coming together and merging right now. I think one of the presentations I've done a few different for different religious spiritual organizations, but one I did was called the business of the church in mind, and then another one had to deal with various things for self-care for like um, primary religious leaders and secondary leaders. But we got a few comments along those lines. So let's dive into the, oh Lord. Okay. So Lamar Graves says one of the biggest lies is to praise your problems away. It's just like taking a drug only to get away for the moment, but have to come right back down and be faced with reality. You have to process those things and receive the necessary help, especially when trauma, torment, and tragedy came the hands of being situations that happened in church or at the hands of leadership. Well, that's heavy. Yeah,
Yeah,
that,
that's another show.
that,
That's a
that,
whole
that is
show.
that
That's
is
a whole show, but I get it. But and
a
that's
whole show.
the thing. Snow, because so when I said take it to home or church, or to keep it home or church, I almost said we keep it at home, but that's where I was abused. Or
Yeah,
you keep it at church, but you have church hurt. So has that really worked for everybody? Most likely not. But what are the origins of that though? Let's talk about the historical reasons why that happened. The reason is because again, our ancestors didn't have therapeutic resources.
true.
So who was I going to go to a white therapist to talk about racism and oppression when they were going to train me to deal with it? Probably not.
Mm.
Would they even see me as a whole person? Probably not. Would they further traumatize me? Probably so. So the only thing that they cannot take from us was our religion, but you can beat everything else. But the only faith we had, and we had to have it just to get through. And so now when we pass on those mantras down to our children and then our children's children, we're still living for some of us in our families as if we're still post-slavery, like we're still right after slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not mindfully parenting. That's not mindfully going through the generations. That is being stuck in a time warp and saying, yeah, we got the current clothing, the current car, the current job, and the current degree, but our mindset is still stuck in 1902, 1947, 1973, even. You
Yep.
know, and but also to add to that, now we have other types of trauma, like we have trauma in politics, like the whole thing with Trump. I can go down a bevy of things I can go down a bevy of effects that has on marginalized people just thinking if he becomes president again.
Facts.
But we can't have that conversation without someone being upset because they're on his side. So then that causes a trauma as well. So now we have different types of trauma on top of the ones that we have inherited.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And also talking about the way that the trauma also it can change the way that our genes are expressed. And that's why we have the vulnerabilities of depression, anxiety, heart disease, and all these things, because once you get way too much of the stress hormones in a cyclic stress response, at some point it starts to damage the layer of the DNA that is protective. And once that becomes damaged, you now have new vulnerabilities that your children can inherit. That's how that works.
Yep. And we know, when we talk about trauma in a general sense, there's so many aspects and layers of trauma, but trauma being a powerful emotional response to something distressing that happens, that can be a lot of different distressing things. And to your point, this year could be pretty distressing for people.
Yes.
Traumatic because of all that's going on politically.
And then also when you think of trauma, now you have to think of what developmental level did it happen to you?
Yes, sir.
Childhood, and then even in childhood, and so again, we talk about age versus actual level of development, because trauma that's suffered in childhood can stunt your whole brain development. It can change.
It does.
Yeah. So it can change, the size of certain parts of your brain, whereby you may exhibit signs of ADHD when they're really not ADHD. You've been traumatized, and your brain doesn't know how to get out of that cyclic response, as a child. So, and I was in the schools for a while, and it was very interesting looking at the way that they counsel versus what I know, because trauma therapy and trauma is about finding out the core of the story, like the core of what's happening. And it can be very different when you're looking at it from an approach that is more general in nature. Because I see behavior as communication. I'm asking, what are you trying to tell me by throwing that chair across the room? Yes, it's not a good thing you're doing it. And at first, I want to, send you out to the, out the room. But then
please don't hit me with the chair, whatever you
but do. Yeah. So let's make sure we have some guidelines first. But what are you trying? What are you saying? Because your body's holding something. Your body's holding that, and it's trying to say something. You may not even have the words. So especially, and there are grown men that don't have emotional words because the words scare them. I can't say that I'm angry. Well, I can say I'm angry, but I can't say that I'm sad because sad feels vulnerable. I'm hurt. Hurt is a vulnerability. We talk about that as well.
That's good. And to your point, one of the things we were talking about earlier, I also have a tremendous amount of men that I see in my practice, and I have an emotional chart on the back of every single door for my in-person people and virtually for my virtual people. And anger is definitely the emotion that men can connect with and identify with the most easiest and simplest, even demonstrated behaviorally. But helping to readjust some of the mental narratives that some men have grew up with in their household, right? Helping them to understand that it's okay to say, I feel sad, I feel depressed, I feel vulnerable, I feel hurt, right? I feel disrespected. And then helping them to communicate that. And I've had men say to me, to the point of kind of the messages and notions of masculinity, I've had men say to me, I feel feminine, even saying that I was hurt or damaged by what happened to me years ago. So helping men navigate those spaces.
Well, if you notice how sometimes when you look at the rearing of girls versus boys, girls are meant to be clean. When they get dirty outside, you go change your clothes, and then when they get a boo boo, you tend to them more. You want to nurse, you want to pick up the baby girl, you want to hold her, but the boy, you send him back out to finish the fight. He's coming to tell you he's hurt. Now you're telling him to go fight. Now that programs him to think that, no, I don't go back, and even if I'm scared, I'm going to fight. So that means I want to risk my life just to save face, because I don't want dad or mom to be questioning me or to feel embarrassed. And then, as you know, whatever we get in childhood, that informs us of how we think the world's going to see us, because our caregivers are the barometer of trust, and they're also our whole barometer of reliability. If I'm failed at home, I have less of a chance of believing that someone's going to even care outside. Even if I show it to you, it's a harder task for you to believe it. So that's why, even, I'm parenting kids with special needs. I have to be very intentional with them, meaning I care enough to stop what I'm doing and focus on you. So the way when you get out in this real world, you can demand that focus as well. But I want to speak more to what you were saying. It's about language. It's like we give girls language. That's why women have an easier way of being able to confront their men and say, this is how I feel and this is why. Then the men don't know how to respond, because first, it's also the thing of men have a hard, some men in the ego thing, they have a hard time being seen as not doing the right thing. That's the thing. And then also what I noticed is, what is your barometer of success? So for us as Black people, sometimes we see the external validation as a means of measuring, because in a world where being Black is seen upon as a certain thing, I can see why we have some reliance on the external types of validation, because we have external ways of being also diminished. So the only way to balance that is with some external validation. But once that becomes extreme, we rely more on the external and we ignore the internal part.
And it's something when we talk about childhood related trauma, and a lot of people who come into our practices or one-to-one or groups or coaching have experienced childhood trauma, and maybe later in life got to a point, maybe they were in their 20s, 30s, 40s, etc. Like, this happened when I was growing up with my family of origin, and this was do you think this is having an effect on me now? And they'll come in with a presenting problem that may be showing up, like you said, in their present day relationships based upon what happened with them in childhood, various types of abuse, physical, verbal, sexual, emotional. One person commented, domineering parents can be emasculating for kids, especially boys, especially in middle to high school years. It's hard to gain a man's confidence when humbled, punished, or humiliated. Yeah. Wow.
And also, I feel that our whole community has this misnomer of what being humble means. If you look in the Bible, the only person we humble ourselves in front of is God.
Yeah, sure.
Nobody said I have to dim my life for Deion Brown. So, for example, you know how long it took me to write that bio and finally accept all the things that I have done? Wow. It's because I was taught, okay, Crow, you're smart, but don't get a big head, or you're doing this, but I understood 2 points of that. Finally, again, this goes back to this old way of thinking. As a Black person back in the day, you didn't have a lot of advantages or opportunities. So yes, you can go to school, but there were some people who went to medical school but still couldn't practice when they finished. So part of being able to also protect our children back in the day was to say there are obstacles. So yes, you can dream, but just know that a lot of those dreams may not come true. Now it's very different. We don't have to say that. We don't have to say that to our children. I've told my kids, listen, dream as big as you want. Now, if you don't get it, you don't get it. And I was going to say something else about that, but being humble for some of us means that we've been taught to shrink ourselves because someone's going to say we have a big head. And I don't believe in false modesty anymore. If you've earned the accolades and if you've earned the compliment, then you can say, I am that. If everybody calls you sexy, call yourself sexy, please.
I like that. That's good.
That's good. I mean, if everyone says that, you're great at this, you can say that you're great because you have evidence. Like, you didn't make it up. And when we talk about trauma, there are so many different types, and then also combined with the frequency and the intensity of what's happening. There's so many different things we have to talk about that's why the conversation doesn't have to end, because you have acute trauma. It's like you have chronic trauma. You have the complex trauma. Those are very, very, very real realms of trauma.
Vicarious trauma.
Yeah. Vicarious meaning, and this is why we can see someone being assaulted by the police on TV of our skin tone, and we can be morally affected. We can be hurt.
And we are.
It's identifiable. Plus, it's not new. It looks like someone we know. Because it's one thing that if it's a Black man, we can assign, we can feel that, but then it happens to a Black woman, or then a kid is shot. Now, every age group, every gender in our race has been affected. So that also increases some people's resident level of anxiety, because I got to wake up and negotiate my race all day, every day.
During the pandemic, I was doing a lot of virtual talks and presentations and discussions while seeing 8,000 people at home because I couldn't go nowhere, right? And I did that, and I served and while navigating. But the pandemic in itself was a type of trauma and traumatic for many of us in various ways. But unfortunately, in the African American community, during that time frame, there was like a secondary trauma happening as well. During that time, there was unfortunately a number of assaults of Black men during that time period that were going on, and so a lot of people were dealing with that, at the same time. I had and I forgot which situation occurred. I don't know if it was Ahmaud Arbery or some other individual whose name is leaving me right now. But I had a new client who literally a Black man, father of several sons, and he noticed that from the pandemic and the stuff he was seeing on TV, he was having two effects that were happening with him. One, he was having increased hostility toward his younger sons, and he was having fear that something may happen to him from simply walking to the mailbox to pick up his mail because he was a larger size Black male.
Absolutely. I remember I was stopped. I was just stopped for a traffic stop, and my I think my son was 13 then, 12 or 13 in the back seat. We stopped, and I could look at him through the rear view, and he looked anxious. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he was like, "How long is this going to last? Because I want to go home." So when we think kids are not paying attention, kids have cell phones. Kids see kids see social media. So kids are smarter than we like. I was smart as a kid, and I picked up on things.
Mhm.
So it's affecting everybody. And I've had younger clients that even during the pandemic, they had more anxieties. Just the pandemic alone, people scared of getting sick because they may have seen people die or get very, very sick from it, or they experience it as well. So now they become obsessive compulsive now, as a way of dealing with their own anxiety. So we're adding the levels of anxiety, but we're not taking off those other levels that are underneath, which, as you know, based on where you are in your mind and body before something happens, kind of helps to dictate how well or how not well you deal with the next thing you deal with. So as you're compiling things, it just makes the next little things seem much bigger.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that's why. So we talk about self-care, self-care. And also with Black men, there's a lot of Black men that go out to the gym, right? And I kind of tell them, that's wonderful. Okay. The gym is not therapy, it is stress management. Because you feel good as all those endorphins are rushing through. You feel like, Mighty Mouse and all that stuff, right? But it lasts for just limited time. And then whatever it was that you didn't work out is still there. That's how you may have people that become gym addicts, because the feeling is so good that when they're not working out, they feel depressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and there's a saying too that I definitely try to, being a gym enthusiast, I definitely try to encourage many of my clients definitely want to work on their physical health as well. And the intersectionality between the physical and the mental health is very
Yeah.
strong, very, very strong. And so I have a number of clients, trying to really work that in. But you're right. The working out is it's not therapy, but I tell people it's therapeutic, not therapy.
Yes.
Um,
And it's integrative, and now what I try to do, and I think there's a lot of therapeutic champions that do this, is we're thinking about holistic health, whole body. Yes, I can work with your mental, but I'll ask, so have you moved today? Have you gone outside? Have you just walked your block if it's safe, just to get that sunlight that helps you to process vitamin D? That's a known mood enhancer. I say the sunlight is free, so go and get you a chock full of it. And when we look at those who are not really prone to getting medication, what other adjuncts, dietary wise, meditation wise, mindfulness wise, that we can do until you're able to kind of think about that, or maybe change your lifestyle to whereas you may not even need the medication, because maybe the things you're eating every day or the activities you're doing are not as beneficial for you because they're not functional.
and Corey,
And it's there to help to kill, it's helped to kill the feeling for a while, but it's not functional. And we even look at psychedelic therapy.
Yep.
So I don't think that marijuana is bad if you use it in a way that's therapeutic. But if you use it as avoidance, like alcohol,
Yes, sir.
that's when it becomes an issue. Whereas that 40-year-old problem is just exacerbated. It's just exacerbated by everything else that's happened since you were 6.
Yep.
And now we have to pick and choose which issue we want to work on first.
We do.
Yeah.
So absolutely do. And there are a lot of men who are saying, I've been traumatized, or I have this trauma. I think it's impacting me, affecting me, and they're seeking out help and support. And they're calling and they're emailing and they're seeing professionals and experts. But then there's still people who are not, and who may be falling through the cracks. And one of the things we were talking about was in addition to like the psychological problems with the anxiety, the depression, and then some of the physical problems, maybe like with the stress related anxiety can cause chest palpitations, back problems, even heart attacks and other health issues. But some people get so overloaded and overwhelmed by trauma stuff that occurred that they don't want to live anymore. So we've seen
Yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up because that was on my mind too. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
So, we are the masters of masking, and we know masking just doesn't help us at all, right?
Oh,
And we've had to because, if we don't mask, and then we're the angry black man or the angry black woman, right?
yes, sir.
But there was a recent study, I think done in March, that says 1 in 3 boys, younger boys in urban areas, have considered suicide
Mm,
because it's a combination of childhood trauma. You also have the trauma in the communities, like violence and other things even school violence, school shootings, and racism also adds to the feeling of being devalued. So if I have suicidal thoughts and I already don't think I have value, that's a perfect mix of pulling that trigger or taking that medication or jumping off that bridge. If I don't feel valued and the things are still happening that lower my sense of felt value, that's medicine for that. And also because we mask, it's like we go through like this list of what are the common symptoms if you think someone is going to when you think someone may consider suicide. They don't work for us. How many times have you looked on Facebook and someone that you chatted with last week is gone,
you're right.
and you had no idea they were suffering?
You're
But
right.
in all the pictures, they're in Cancun, they got a six-pack, they got all the girls, they got that nice car, they're alphas, they're doctors, but they're dead.
Yeah.
And I always tell my friends, because I'm not part of a Greek thing, but I say, um, I'm a nosy friend. If your eye twitched the wrong way, I'm like, do I need to drive over there? Because that's part of my hypervigilance. That's
Mm,
how I've used the traumas. That's how I've used my trauma and the hypervigilance as a protective mechanism for everybody. Meaning, I can see that something's changed because no one looked at me. So
mm,
I try to say, what kind of organizations do we have with our brothers that were treating us like everyone else is treating us, like we want to kind of be in the surface level of the fray? Because if I do all this planting and do all this, we got to be close.
absolutely.
We got to be close. There should not be a reason why your own friends on your own timeline is saying, "I didn't know he had a problem." That kind of bothers me
I
because
understand. Yeah, I understand that.
yeah, because how do you not know if y'all are hanging out and having these barbecues and this service stuff, but there's no conversations? Hey, bro, I'm just checking in with you. I just want to see how you're doing. And practicing that within the brotherhoods of different things. And it's not the fact that you have to; it's just another avenue of being as available and as vulnerable as you can.
Yep, it's needed. All of everyone that comes in to see me, for example, in my practice, I share with them. I say, in addition to, all right, have your regular biweekly or monthly with me as your therapist, which is great. I offer professional support. I say to people, do you have a best friend
Mhm.
or several best friends, or who's in your social network that you
Yeah,
feel comfortable with opening up, talking to, sharing? Because the reality is, just as human beings, no matter who you are, what you do, you all of us, our education, credentials, background, etc. We all have moments where we need our social group, right?
yeah,
We need our people in our social network to talk to share with, to be open and vulnerable and say, I'm feeling such and such today. And so that becomes very important and sometimes, like you said, you would be the type of friend who would be like, I'll go and pull up. And that could literally save somebody's life.
yeah. I lost a friend this week. There was past week,
I'm sorry.
Tuesday. It was someone I was trying to reach because I knew something was wrong. I was that friend, like, wait a minute, I haven't heard from so and so. And plus, when he gets isolated, I said he's using. I
Okay.
know because I know the cycle because I pay attention and sometimes I'm nosy.
Yeah.
And I got the call and I said, I know what happened. I know. And it just further drives me, just to be more attentive.
Yeah.
But one thing I've done with my kids, I'm so grateful for, is my kids have seen me cry. My kids have seen me angry. My kids have seen me happy. My kids have seen me dating. My kids have seen me have the typical throes of an emotional time that's average for a human being. So
Mm,
that way, when they have their moments, it's not a shock. It's not embarrassing. They know they can come to me
that's
when
right.
they want to. Um, but to also speak to that, it's a matter of, I always tell my clients, I want to emulate what your support system should be like, but I don't want to be your only part of your support system. So, have the barriers and boundaries. So again, like you said, have the exercise. Well, okay, well, I'm glad you shared this, but have you been able to feel comfortable sharing it with that person on your list that you said you want to try to be closer with? having them to try to open up to at least one person and see that it was okay to do so. Because I have clients that say, well, but no one understands me. So where'd you get that from? Oh, well, because growing up, people, my mom and dad, didn't really hear me. I said, so when you go out and hang out, at the club, are you with your mom and dad? When you're at your, your meetings with your friends, is that your mom and dad? So it's just putting it in context of how the past can show up and make you believe that because certain people made you feel that way, then
Yep.
everybody else sees you that way. So it's about integrating the mindfulness of the presence. Really it's about, are you present in the moment, because you're reflecting something else that's also impeding your whole ability to have your human experience. And I tell everyone, we all deserve that love and support and nurturing, no matter how old you are. And it takes a village to raise a village, not just a child. I need my village.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need my village, because I'd be texting people like, all right now, so we going to, so like if I say let's hang out, it's more so I need to talk to y'all, you know. And also understanding that even though I know a lot, there's a lot I don't know. And as I grow in myself, I'm always going to need somebody. And I had to learn that, because coming from a family that did not know how to deal with the rampant increase of childhood rape in our family, I did feel like I was by myself. So growing up, I didn't know who to talk to because I didn't trust anybody. I had to learn to retrust all over again. And as you know, in our work for men, that's hard. That's a hard feat.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It is. Okay. Well, it looks like we're just about at our time. This
went quickly.
It did. It really did. I think there's been a tremendous amount of audience engagement. For sure. There's definitely some other comments and questions we didn't get to, but I think we covered it quite a bit.
Right.
Of stuff. So what I would like to ask you to do is to I guess just share some parting words in the sense of, for men, one of the things we were going to kind of delve into, but any parting words that kind of come up for you, but definitely like just encourage, kind of like maybe men who are at the precipice of considering a journey toward healing, what that may take or look like.
Absolutely. And this is based on my experience and not just the work, right? Healing does require you to unbury what you've buried all this time. And when you dig up the past, something will scare you. When you dig up the past, something will make you feel away. It's the discomfort of it all that we're afraid to sit through. It's the discomfort of the anxiety. It's the discomfort of the memory. But the trauma memory is asking for you to digest it. It's about, if you think about building muscle, when you raise your metabolism, it builds the strength. So when you raise your mental health in terms of the processing, it helps to burn off that memory. And also resilience is okay, but if you're constantly resilient, that means you're constantly stressed also. If you're constantly having to be resilient, you're constantly stressed. But again, going back to healing, you have to unbury what you've buried that's still haunting you. You buried it, but it's still showing its hand. So how about you bring it up on your own and you control that? Then when you settle it, you can finally put that to bed, and it becomes like every other memory that you recall. Our memory is about, how did I deal with it the last time? So once you have a successful way of dealing with that, you have a new tool there, because life is going to still life the hell out of you.
That's
right. You have a new tool that you can use with the next adversity. That's what the trauma memory says, is I'm only doing what is in the memory. And I'm asking you to give me a new way to operate in that, because it's already happened.
Thank you.
And I want you to own it instead of it keep owning you and you can't explain why.
That's good. Good stuff. Good stuff. While you were talking, I scrolled over to Instagram, which was very live as well, and someone had asked, how can mothers, wives, and significant others help? I just commented, wives, mothers, significant others can help encourage counseling, therapy, and treatment to help manifest wholeness. Do you want to comment on?
Yes, very quickly. There was a point about how we change how Black men operate. We also have to understand that Black women have power. because Black men want to please Black women. So if we allow our men to come to us or to even have the resources and not condemn him for being the type of man you thought that your mom and dad thought that your man should be, he is probably more prone to opening up because you accept him as that man that can. Because they want to please you.
That's right. I added that into the Instagram comment. That's good. They do. They definitely do. Sir, how can people reach you, contact you, connect with you? Anything new you have coming out, you're working on, etc.?
Yeah. So real quickly, because time is running out for you, but I'm on all mediums, Twitter but mostly Instagram. Is Corey George Cares. That's my mantra. Next year it'll be Dr. Corey George, but right now it's Corey George Cares. What I'm working on, I told you, before that, if you're in Atlanta, there is a LGBTQ plus it's a healing symposium that's happening next weekend in Atlanta. I'll be there, and it's free for families as well. I have a trans daughter, so I'm on a panel to talk about that as well too. I'm working on I want to say a book, but I have a dissertation first. We talked about that. Otherwise, I really am just doing what I love. I'm doing what, and it's information, it's sharing, it's helping. So that's where I am right now.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you much for that, sir. Those of you that are here through Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, you can connect with me on my Facebook page at the Self-Care Therapist, Instagram, the Self-Care_Therapist, and you can click on the link tree, and here's my website as well. All right, so we want to thank you all for tuning in. Mr. George, I'm going to ask you to hold tight for a second.
Okay.
Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of An Integrated Approach. We are here each and every first Sunday at 6 p.m. We hope that you all got much out of this and that you can go back and watch the replay and share with others. You can like and watch or listen again on YouTube as well under DMV Therapist. So hopefully everyone has a good night.